Imagine boarding a plane, ready for your destination, and then disaster strikes. But in a twist that defies all logic, only one person emerges alive. These are the unexplainable plane crashes that continue to baffle scientists, with survivors who live through the impossible. What really happened in those final moments? Stick around to uncover 5 unbelievable survival stories that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about fate. The sole survivor, Vesna Vujovic, unbelievable fall from 33,000 feet. In 1972, a Yugoslav Airlines DC-9 exploded mid-flight, breaking a part of Czechoslovakia. The aircraft was at 33,000 feet when it disintegrated in the air, killing everyone on board except one, a flight attendant named Vesna Vujovic. She survived the crash despite plummeting to Earth inside part of the plane's fuselage. What baffles scientists and aviation experts is how Vesna survived the fall from such an extreme altitude without a parachute. Some speculate that the wreckage cushioned her impact, while others suggest the snow-covered ground played a role. She was found alive, though critically injured, in the wreckage. The exact circumstances of her survival remain a mystery, and scientists still find it hard to explain how she lived through one of the highest falls in aviation history.
She broke almost every bone in her body, and she was paralyzed temporarily.
Kenya Airways Flight 507, the miracle survivor. In 2007, Kenya Airways Flight 507 crashed just minutes after taking off from Douala, Cameroon. The plane plunged into a swamp, and all 114 passengers and crew were presumed dead. However, as rescue workers sifted through the wreckage, they made a shocking discovery. There was one survivor, a young man found clinging to life amid the debris. Despite the devastating crash, no one could explain how he managed to survive, especially when the majority of the aircraft was destroyed on impact. Scientists were puzzled by his miraculous escape, given the force of the crash. His survival was deemed an anomaly, and to this day, experts continue to wonder how he defied the odds.
Because of bad weather in Lagos, the flight overflew Lagos and went on to Abidjan. As a consequence, when the aircraft left Abidjan, it had passengers who were bound for Lagos out of Nairobi.
NSA Flight 508, Julian Cook's descent into the jungle. In 1971, NSA Flight 508 was flying over the Peruvian rainforest when it was struck by lightning, causing the plane to break apart mid-air. Julian Cook, a 17-year-old passenger, was thrown from the aircraft while still strapped into her seat. She plummeted 10,000 feet into the jungle, only to wake up hours later injured but alive. Julian was the sole survivor of the crash, and despite her injuries, she managed to walk for days through the rainforest until she was rescued. Experts have been baffled by how she survived both the fall and the harsh jungle environment. Some attribute her survival to the dense foliage, which may have cushioned her descent, but there is no clear scientific explanation for how she lived through the catastrophic crash. Yemenia Flight 626, survivor of the Indian Ocean. In 2009, Yemenia Flight 626 was en route to the Comoros Islands when it crashed into the Indian Ocean. Of the 153 people on board, only one survived, a 12-year-old girl named Bahia Bakari. Clinging to debris, Bahia spent hours floating in the open sea before being rescued. What confounds experts is how Bahia survived the impact of the crash, which left the aircraft shattered and all other passengers dead. Her ability to stay afloat for so long in the ocean with no life jacket and despite her injuries adds to the mystery. Scientists and aviation specialists are still unable to fully explain her survival.
Soon faded. 8 hours later, a small fishing boat spotted the little girl. Stunningly, her only injuries were a few bruises and a broken collarbone.
Northwest Airlines Flight 255, the Miracle Child. In 1987, Northwest Airlines Flight 255 crashed shortly after takeoff from Detroit Metropolitan Airport. Of the 156 people on board, only one survived, a 4-year-old girl named Cecilia Sijan. She was found among the wreckage, alive but severely injured. Investigators were puzzled as to how Cecilia survived the crash, especially when everyone else perished on impact. Some theorize that her small size allowed her to be shielded by parts of the plane or a seat, but no clear explanation has emerged. The crash and Cecilia's survival remain one of the most baffling in aviation history.
When I realized that I was the only person to survive that plane crash, I was maybe in middle school, high school maybe, being an adolescent and confused. So it was just extra stress for me.
With scientists still searching for answers, surviving the unsurvivable, these stories defy explanation, leaving us with more questions than answers. Could there be something science can't yet explain, or were these miraculous escapes just pure luck? One thing's for sure, these survivors will forever be part of aviation's most mysterious and haunting moments. Don't miss out on more incredible stories like this. Hit that subscribe button and make sure you never miss another mind-blowing mystery.